And thank you for waiting. My name is Bill Smith. I'm an independent chair, and on my left I've got Steve McNally, who's an accredited commissioner and also local councillor, and then next to him is Alan Watson. So our job is to hear to the evidence and then make recommendations on the 4 topics we've got. This morning the evidence we've been hearing has been to do with infrastructure, now its designation, and it's Lucklow Farms. And so is it Mr. Ryan, are you going to be leading the Lucklow Farms team?
Yes, that's right, Commissioner, and good morning to you all.
Through the chair, we have some people from infrastructure. I just want to know.
Okay, so if you want to introduce your team, and then I'll get the other staff who are online to introduce themselves, Mr. Ryan.
Look, thank you very much. Firstly, thank you for accommodating these hearings by online medium. The consultant team for Lucklow are physically situated around the country, so it's appreciated that council can accommodate hearings in this way. For Lucklow is a landowner at Puhiki Beach at the Kurikuri Peninsula. It has previously appeared before the committee in relation to submissions in relation to vehicles on beaches and other matters, and there are rezoning hearings coming up which are also of interest to Lucklow. In terms of the team before you, there is Mr. Gavin Soul, who is a Canterbury-based wastewater engineer, who you will hear from. There is James Blythe, a hydrologist. Forgive me, James, I think you might be Wellington-based. That's correct. There is Melanie Dixon, an Auckland-based ecologist. And there is also Mr. John Sturgis, the principal and director of Lucklow Farm Limited. So that's the team this morning, Commissioners.
Well, just for your information, I'll get the staff member who did the designation chapter. What do you report? Introduce yourself.
I'm Lily Morgan. I am the writer for the designations report, and if I could have the infrastructure team introduce themselves, please.
Hi everyone, my name is Lossalina. I'm the infrastructure consenting team leader, and I'm joined here by
Louise Wilson. I'm senior infrastructure planner, formerly compliance advisor, and I have had some interactions with you, John, before over a previous appointment. So nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Louise.
Right, so Mr. Ryan, unless you've got anything you wish to raise, it's over to you to present your submissions and evidence for Lucklow Farms.
Thanks very much. I propose just to give a short introduction to why Lucklow is here and what outcomes are sought, and to briefly touch on the matters raised by the witnesses. The material that's been pre-circulated includes, you should have before you statements from Mr. Soul, Mr. Blythe, Ms. Dixon, a PowerPoint slideshow, and these submissions. Just in terms of managing matters, it's anticipated that you will have had the opportunity to probably read or at least skim read the material. The witnesses are either able to simply have their materials read, or the witnesses could give a brief précis of their evidence, whichever it really is going to be helpful to the committee.
I mean, from my point, we've read all the information. I've read them in full. Probably the only question and thing I'd like you to concentrate on is what you would like us to do with the designation. The expert evidence some of them don't even mention a designation, and I accept the expert evidence, but it's mainly what you would like us to do with the designation. That's what
Yes.
we're dealing with today.
Okay. Well, look, on that footing, the experts, I may invite one or two to comment on a couple of matters, but otherwise we'll take the evidence effectively as read, and I'll address the Commissioner's question as to what relief the submitter is seeking in terms of outcomes. But just backing up and restarting the submission. So most of the designations in the Far North Plan are effectively rollovers of existing designations, and the designation for the Rangiputa wastewater treatment plant FN 160 is a rollover. It has previously appeared in previous iterations of the Far North Plan. The wastewater treatment plant itself appears to be based off probably a Ministry of Works design from the 1970s. It has an existing resource consent which was granted by the Northland Regional Council and last granted in 2008. So in the materials in annexure to the submission is a copy of the 2008 consent, and the concern from the submitter is that the wastewater treatment plant does not appear to be operating in a way which avoids all effects, in particular effects to the adjacent farmland. And the concern, therefore, in terms of what do we want FNDC to do through the planning process is to seek some additional conditions which link into the regional consent. And specifically in terms of outcomes, there is a suggested condition at paragraph 14 of the first bullet point at page 5 of the written materials of the written legal submissions to you, and that seeks that a condition be imposed through the district plan which links to compliance with all necessary resource consents from, in this case, the Northland Regional Council and any other applicable statutory requirements. And so the outcome sought is effectively a condition to be imposed through the Far North Plan process, which will act as a prompt to link to compliance with regional consent conditions and any other requirements. And the reason, while that is a relatively modest outcome that is sought, the reason for the request is linked to the submitter's concern that the wastewater treatment plant is not operating in a way which fully internalizes adverse effects. And I've set out at paragraph 9 of the legal submissions a synopsis of the submitter's concerns. And if I could just speak to those, which is at paragraph 9 of the written material. The panel has a copy of the materials, and the first concern is that there is a vulnerability of the adjacent lake, dune lake systems to contaminants from all sources, as I refer to at paragraph A of item 9 of my submissions. And at paragraph 9, there is a reference to a map which is attached to the evidence of Ms. Dixon, ecologist, and the evidence from the from the consultant team is that the predominant hydrological direction in the area is towards the Dune Lake system. So the conditions of monitoring in respect of the resource consent imposed by FNDC don't really provide for off-site monitoring. So although the hydrological conditions point to the hydrology heading in the direction of the Dune Lakes, there is no effective off-site monitoring occurring at the outside of the designation. And that's a matter which I can foreshadow Lucklaw will be taking up with the Northland Regional Council through its powers to review the conditions of the resource consent. So I'm just hopefully sharing with you on the screen a copy of a map attached to the evidence of hydrologist Mr. Blythe. And as I've noted at paragraph B of my submissions, Mr. Blythe sets out that the wastewater treatment plant's located within a surface water catchment that drains towards the wetlands and lakes rather than southwest towards the coast. So it doesn't drain towards Rangiputa or the harbour. And the concern from the submitter is that the farm monitoring within the farm is showing up high levels of contaminants at sources identified as spot B and spot A, or spot 1 and spot 2 of the map attached to the evidence of Mr. Blythe. And in short, while the farm can identify high levels of contaminants at these locations from the sampling undertaken by Mr. Sturgis and the farm, these locations are not being picked up in the monitoring through the NRC consent because the NRC consent does not have any off-site monitoring outside of the scope of the designation. And as I've foreshadowed, that'll be a matter that will be taken up with the Northland Regional Council. As I'm just working my way through the written materials, the construction design plans appear to be fairly rudimentary. There's very limited material in terms of what is the construction and design that the plant was originally commissioned on. And Mr. Soul describes the design intentions of the pond, linking it back to Ministry of Works design. And the concern of the submitter is that while, as I say at paragraph F of item 9 of my submissions, is that while there is limited monitoring data available, it's reasonable in the view of the submitter to theorise based on the topography and the presence of iron pan beneath these sites, that the lakes and the wetlands are connected to the surface water flow. So the lakes are what are described as perched or semi-perched, and that's described in the evidence of Ms. Dixon. And it's reasonable in the submitter's view that the catchment receives seepage from shallow aquifer sources, and that those sources likely include the catchment treatment plant. The other concern from the submitter is that although the regional consents require council as designating owner to prevent stormwater inflow to the reticulated system, the analysis by Mr. Soul indicates that stormwater is in fact entering the wastewater system at Rangiputa contrary to the consent conditions, and that is having a significant negative effect at times by increasing the flow through the wastewater plant, and that's referred to at Mr. Soul's evidence at his paragraph 11. And Mr. Soul says that high flows can wash out biomass, reducing the treatment effectiveness. As I noted, paragraph H of the written materials, there appears to be no screening occurring of wastewater before it enters the pond system. So there are 3 ponds, with the ponds having a system which provide for screening, but that screening is not hooked up in practice. And Mr. Soul says that screening of the wastewater is important because it reduces load to the system, and that screen should be connected. And again, while the conditions of the NRC consent are silent in terms of prescribing screening, although there's provision made on site for screening, that doesn't appear to be connected. Mr. Soul also notes that there's currently no limits, as I noted paragraph I, there's currently no limits on the discharge for many of the common indicators for contamination. So the only current measure that's monitored, I understand, is biological oxygen demand, but there are no conditions for off-site contaminants in terms of total nitrogen, total phosphorus, or fecal coliforms. And monitoring for those indicators is not occurring outside of the designation site, even though the hydrological conditions suggest that surface flows are occurring in the direction of the farmland and also to the lake system. So the concern of the submitter is that the pond system is based on an old 1970s design. The conditions have not been really kept up with modern performance indicators. The hydrological conditions point to migration of contaminants off-site, and the outcome that's sought is the addition of a modest condition, which is reflected at paragraph 14 of the written materials to you.
What condition is that? Because paragraph 14 refers to Auckland Council and landfill.
Yes, yes. So I would adopt that condition, but make all necessary amendments to have it apply to FN 160, i.e. the condition be worded with all necessary amendments to have it apply to the Rangiputa wastewater treatment plant and apply to consents from the Northland Regional Council and any applicable statutory requirements.
So you're asking us to do an alteration to what the Auckland Council plan says and then put it into Rangiputa?
I'm asking you to adopt a same or similar condition to what Auckland Council does with some of its designations and apply it to the Rangiputa wastewater treatment plant.
So what's the basis, through you, Mr. Chair, what's the basis for that? You've referred to section 31 of the RMA, which I've got on the screen in front of me now, but
Yes.
it's not apparent to me from reading that that would give any jurisdiction to add a condition to a designation in the manner that you're saying.
Yes. The report to you in terms of section 42 anticipates that council has the power to impose conditions on designations, and that's a function of district planning. It's a district planning function. So I've indicated a plan where that's occurred elsewhere, that other plans, e.g. Auckland, impose conditions on designations. So it's requested that a similar condition be imposed here.
But in this instance, the Far North District Council has just asked for it to be rolled over. They haven't asked for anything. So what legal right, what section of the Act gives us the powers to do that?
Yes, the submitters sought relief that additional conditions be imposed through its submission in 551. And in my submission,
what section of any legislation gives us the power to do that? I think that's the question from Mr. Watson and myself.
right.
How do we do that legally?
Well, it would be a rule in the plan. So it would be akin to the same rule-making power that you have in sections 75 and the other provisions relating to district rule-making powers.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll just pick up on that.
Yeah, Mr. Watson put another question.
So you're not actually asking for an additional condition on the designation. You're asking for a rule in the proposed district plan that covers it off. Is that the case?
I think it could be expressed as a condition applying to FN 160, but the condition would have the effect of being a district rule.
Thank you.
Now, in terms of the materials before you, there is a slideshow from Lucklaw Farms. Mr. Sturgis is available to speak to those. There are a couple of slides that I wish to bring to your attention, and those have to do with the cross sections in terms of construction. If I could also just briefly get Mr. Sturgis to speak to the monitoring locations that are referred to by Mr. Blythe in his evidence. So, John, if you could just explain to the committee how the farm is picking up the monitoring results that are referred to in James Blythe's evidence. We just need to turn on your mic, John.
Can you hear me all right, Stuart?
Thank you now.
Yes, the key longer term monitoring location is on your map there. That would be marked A or spot 1.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a pond that we've been monitoring as part of our biannual tour studies, and just to check that the water draining into the beach from the farm, and the Maori name for the beach is dig in the water beach because of its tuatua. So it's a widely held feature in the area, and has a lot of recognition from people in the quality of the tuatua online. I even saw Shane Jones the other day espousing the greatness of these tuatuas. So we've been monitoring what the farm's releasing and publishing those results to I think to Louise as well as Doc and others who are interested. And Pond A has always been a very high reading, and my wife who farms it has even gone to the extent of excluding stock from the area, and that's what was surprising when we saw no change in those results and started to make us think that perhaps there's some other place where this could be. It's just monitoring for E. coli where this could be coming from. And so it was mainly when I saw the results from Melanie, and then having explained to me how the heath zone works, which is basically the area on the left-hand part of the slide where we it's termed a forestry block. It's got a bit of pines in it, but it's mainly Manuka and Kanuka, and we run that for the production of honey, and it's cultivated quite regularly. We go through and take out the thicker Manuka trees and try to have the trees running to get the best recovery out of the area. But her explanation to me was all to do with nitrogen and how nitrogen then makes the wattle trees grow. And you can't see on that slide so well because it's all hatched, but the area around the poo ponds is dense with wattle trees. And similarly, that area between B and C, which is a block that's our daughter owns, that has to be remaining in bush. And the trouble is the only bush that grows there is wattles. So there's this whole wattle thing, and then putting Melanie's evidence into perspective, I realized that there is this pan that exists that we come across every now and then. In fact, it outcrops in parts of the farm. And so then linking with the data kindly given to us by Louise on the monitoring, which I think is one of those, on another slide, there's some X's marked around the poo ponds. It's one of those bores. That is the monitoring point. We started thinking, well, maybe it's just that what the council's been monitoring all these years is in another perched aquifer that is actually doesn't really get to see any of the poo pond type releases, except what might leak down the back of the plastic liner that's in the bore. So that's the history behind the area, and so B and C on that map, that's B there. That's like often the flow is underground in the area here. There's nowhere else in the farm has these above ground water flows, and it only happens at B and C because the Rangiputa development has a lot of sealed land, and that the waters from that concentrate and are at such a high level that the underground tomos that normally feed the water through the farm actually start flowing above ground. And it's not, I've never noticed them being overly smelly or anything. They look like just clean water, but when you sample them, they're actually very high in E. coli. And so that's been a recent revelation that we hadn't expected, and is certainly not what when I put in this designation one, it was more to do with my liability that I had as the easement owner, and the fact that I'd seen that the Maoris with other sites in the area had blocked off access where they had pipes through easement areas because of concerns with what was happening in the ponds. So that's the easement area. Maybe if you go back to the map. Yeah, so that map, there's a sort of a piece of road that one there, just back to that one where it shows the white. You can see where the pipeline comes through. It just comes through Lucklaw Farm land. That's not anything to do with the designation. And so it was that pipe and us potentially being responsible for contaminating the wetlands, and then even, killing off all the tuatūas because we let this material in was what this was. The original concern came from that. But then the data we've had from the FNDC and then employing experts to try and figure it out is sort of, maybe we've got the solution, and we're happy to work with council to try and fix it all up so that we get a nice result coming out of it. And I think what Stuart's asking is that this panel do their little bit, which is not a lot. We're not asking for a lot. That just helps move that along in a fairly quick manner. That's all. Is that enough, Stuart?
Yes, thank you, John.
Okay.
So, unless members of the committee have any questions for the respective experts, that's a submission for Luckwell.
I think it's pretty clear.
I think it's clear, the evidence is pretty clear. Have you had discussions with the Far North District Council and the Northern Regional Council regarding the conditions that are already there and should be getting enforced?
There has been communication between Mr. Sturgis and FNDC in terms of information gathering.
What about the NRC? Because they're the ones who are enforcing the consent conditions. So have you sent any of the information to the NRC monitoring people?
That's a work in progress. So the resource consent provides for a review of conditions within the month of May. And it's anticipated that Lucklaw will be asking NRC to review some of the conditions within the review period.
And it expires in 2032, is that correct?
That's correct, Commissioner, yes.
Yeah, Mr. Ryan, just having read all the evidence in your legal submissions, I just wonder in terms of what the chair's just saying. Obviously, you need to take a wide approach. You need to take a couple of 2 or 3 approaches to solving the problem, but perhaps the more direct one would be through the regional council seeking a review if there is a review condition there, or even if there wasn't, an adverse effect being generated that needs to be taken account of at a later stage. Is that something, from what you've just said to the chair, is that something you're pursuing as well?
Yes, it will be pursued, and it's accepted that council's ability to supplement regional conditions is limited, but and I accept that taking up with the NRC is the appropriate course in terms of review of any conditions. However, it's asked that the changes sought at paragraph 14 of my submission or to similar effect is a modest request in terms of trying to link to district functions as well.
Yeah, I've actually got that highlighted on the copy here, so thank you.
And the final question for me, paragraph 17, you refer to another condition regarding a change to the order condition, because my understanding reading the NRC consent is an order condition already on.
Yes, I agree with that and haven't pressed that point. Yes.
Right. So do you want your suggestion to us is that we put that condition in 17 in instead the existing condition? Or are you going to pursue that with the NRC?
I think that you could strike out my condition my paragraph 17, because it's something that we'll take up with the NRC.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, you've got a hydrologist online there, I think. Can I just get a brief overview of the water flow? You talk about groundwater or heading for an aquifer. You talk about overland flow paths, and I know the area at Rangiputa, and it's potentially I've walked over your land at some stage in the past, John Sturgis. But the ponding or perch. But you referred to the tuatūas. How does the water get out to the beach? Is it through that sand dune along the front? I was just wondering how it gets there, please.
So Mr. Blythe may be able to assist, or John.
Yeah, either or. Hydrologist.
I think I'll let James get it to the lake, and then, but from the lake there is a creek that's always been there that flows from the lake, that western lake, through to the estuary area in the middle of the beach, and in winter it's free flowing, but in summer it often just flows through the sand. A little sand groin builds there, and unless we get heavy rains, it just exits through that area.
So there is a map shown there that shows Lake Kaitāia west, and it goes to the west of that again, and then out through the sand dunes as you described, I guess. Yeah,
it does a big circular route and ends up. The estuary has moved around over the years, and at the moment the outlet is in the middle of the beach pretty much. But I've seen in older maps where it's been, 300 or 400 meters further to the east. And I know even since we've had the farm, it's drifted another 100 meters west at times. So it sort of spreads itself out around that area depending on what's happening and movements of sand and sand dunes, which limit it coming out. Yeah, and I noticed there's also SNA areas marked off, which I guess you've got those fenced, so the cattle or the livestock grazing aren't impacting it. I'm just trying to identify how it gets from the ponds, whether it's overland flow through Tomo, whoever, and that might be the hydrologist. Okay, I'll leave that to you, James, and I can help if you need any support.
Thanks, John. Kia ora koutou. So my summary of evidence is reasonably straightforward in terms of the hydrology in this area, and it's primarily assuming that there's an iron pan across a large portion of the land that restricts sort of deep recharge to deeper groundwater resources. That map in my Appendix A and was also in Melanie Dixon's evidence is quite handy, is showing the topography draining towards those lakes and wetland systems, and that's based off a flow accumulation analysis in GIS that was undertaken using digital elevation model for the area. So the channel and pathway of drainage through the wetland and out of the lake was identified with that approach and sort of verified with aerial imagery and with John's knowledge of the beach as well. So that's where previous assessments I'd seen from NIWA had assessed some of the lakes as having sort of no inflows and outflows. But my personal opinion is that I think there will be outflows from Lake Kaitāia west, particularly through that channel when it's at high water levels, and that there are inflows of probably surface water and shallow groundwater under unsaturated conditions. As an example, we're getting overland flow, or there's a high water table after prolonged rainfall, and just due to the natural topography draining towards that catchment. So hopefully that's a reasonable summary of just the general groundwater direction. Most of it's likely shallow groundwater seepage, and I guess the unknown is around the connectivity of that wastewater treatment plant, which has seepage out of its pond 3, and how that then connects and gets into those wetland systems. It's likely that iron pan sits underneath those ponds, so any contaminants will be staying within that sort of system that's draining towards the lake and the wetlands.
But at this stage, you're not saying that the ponds is leaking. You haven't done enough work, have you?
From what we can tell, the pond 3, so it goes through 2 treatment ponds and then discharges to ground via seepage. My understanding from the website of the Far North District Council is it says the ponds discharge to deep bores, but we found no evidence of that in the consent, and Mr. Soul's evidence suggests it's discharged via seepage to ground. And there's a monitoring bore, a groundwater monitoring bore that's as part of consent conditions, but there's no evidence of what depth that monitoring bore is at or where it's located. So we have monitoring results for it, but very uncertain about its location, and the frequency is every sort of 4 months. So there's a good chance you might miss spikes in Easter and Christmas when seasonal influx of people. So there's ongoing questions about the monitoring and its discharge plume. But if it's going via seepage, it's likely the contaminants are staying within that shallow aquifer.
And have you located the source of the E. coli? Have we done a study on that? Is it birds, livestock, or is it definitely the plant?
No. So my evidence suggested fecal source tracking and speciation of pathogens. So there's it's identified to date is that there's high E. coli readings, some of them hitting the lab detection limit of 2,400 CFU per 100 mil. So either way, that's still high, but the sources are unknown. The recent sampling from John and Lucklaw Farms were right on the proximity of where the treatment plant is outside of farmland. So they're up gradient of any potential ruminant inputs. So they were still having readings of over 2,400.
Thank you. Yeah, the reason I asked about the hydrology is I was involved some years ago. Whangarei District Council looked at putting a sewage plant out at the bottom of Ocean Beach and at Carry Mountain Farms farming that. And they found the hydrology actually wasn't going out through the sand dunes, it was coming in and down an internal farm creek and back out to the coast. It's through a similar system to Mr. Sturgis explained a minute ago. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, thanks. Unless you've got anything to add, Mr. Ryan, we've got no further questions. So you're going to need a point of clarification? No? Okay.
No, commissioners, that's it for the submitter. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I think it's suggesting that we have an infrastructure team available if there was any questions of them directly at this time as well.
No, I mean, no, I don't think we've got no questions in infrastructure people. Have we got any questions in infrastructure people? I mean, the only question I've got, I did read in the PowerPoint presentation attached to Mr. Sturgis was going to refer to is that it gets monitored, and the last results I read said everything was compliant. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, that's correct. It does have a good compliance history. The only breach in the compliance history was when there was a fault in the flow meter for a few months that had to be remedied. But otherwise, it has been compliant with its consent, noting that the consent was issued in 2008 and the expectations in 2008 are quite different than what they are now.
I understand that, and it's coming for review in 2032, isn't it?
That's correct.
Is that the monitoring of the district council consent? Is that what you're referring to?
The Northern Regional consent. Yeah. It's a Northern Regional consent you're referring to.
That's correct. FNDC is the consent holder for the operation of the treatment plant, but the consent was issued by NRC in 2008.
Yeah, so you're monitoring your own consent. Is that the case?
Yeah, we are the consent holder. So both NRC conducts monitoring as the regulator and FNDC as the consent holder also conducts monitoring.
Yeah, I understand that. So what results are the Northern Regional Council getting from their monitoring?
Their last monitoring report last year was also compliant. There's been no enforcement action from NRC.
So if you did have a problem, if you had a problem from your monitoring, either you or the regional council officers, and you felt that the conditions on the designation were insufficient to cover what was occurring, how would you go about implementing an additional condition?
We wouldn't address it through the designation, we'd address it through the resource consent. So there's various ways you could do that. If NRC felt it was necessary, they could use their enforcement powers to infringe or abate, or they could induce the Section 128 review.
Yeah, I'd suggest the response to the questions.
All our monitoring results are sent to NRC. Sorry, apologies. All our monitoring results are sent to NRC, so they receive all our monitoring results as per the monitoring schedule of the resource consent.
I'd suggest your answers to the questions have been very helpful. Thanks.
And I've just got, are they correct in saying the internet screen's not connected?
That's the question I had, yeah.
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, my understanding is the screen was physically put on site about 10 years ago, and then they ran out of budget for some additional works that were required to actually make it work. I understand that the pipe that goes to the inlet is a gravity pipe. It's not a pumped pipe. So they weren't actually able to get the screen to work unless a wet well and some other devices were put in place to make the screen work. So I don't disagree with the recommendation about the screen. I have spoken with the operator. He advises me that the treatment plant is intermittently aerated. They do have the ability to aerate it. That was one of the recommendations of the submitter's water quality expert and engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had, but so that would suggest that the plant was mentioned in the legal submission, plant not operating to internalise discharge problems. Would that be correct?
I query whether we're required to fully internalise all effects of a treatment plant. Under the RMA structure, we are allowed to have some effects outside of the property boundary, provided those effects are not more than minor. You know, that's part of the consideration when a resource consent is granted. Consent isn't granted because there are no effects beyond the boundary. It's granted because those effects are minor or less than minor. You guys are commissioners, you can correct me on that, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, I guess my point is if there's no screening, and the legal comment was we've reduced the hydraulic capacity because there's additional sediment and so on, increased sludging entering the ponds, which reduces what it can hold, increases the potential for discharge. So back to that point, plant not operating to influence discharge problems. If there is
The expert evidence was balanced, and I think a lot of the points raised are valid, but is it appropriate to address that through changes to the designation, or are there more effective means to address the matters raised?
Yeah, well, if it's proven there's migration of contaminants that need to be offset, then we've got to do something, I guess. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I will stop the recording.